the mainstream world out there. So, for example, when period leave is introduced, there is a lot of division between people. Some people feel that this is only going to create more discrimination against women, because if you're, but on the other hand, proponents of women's health talk about that there are real issues at hand. What do you feel about the debate?
I really believe that yes, we need equality is not a question for me. I mean, we need to be as equal as the men and the boys. But when it comes to bodies and understanding that we are different, and that has to be understood, and because you can't in the blanket of equality discount how girls are built. We are just built differently, and it matters, right?
The topic of menstrual health and women's health globally versus India.
I think when it comes to India, I mean, I think we are just getting started off. I mean, and we need a lot more research, and we need very India-specific research. We can't keep going back to what your research paper in, say, athletes from the USA, and you can't just pick that things up and come to India and say, let's apply that. We need India-specific interventions that work on our bodies, that work for our nutrition, that work for what is available here, for our culture.
By the time girls turn 14, they are set to drop out of sports twice at the rate of boys. What is the role that puberty and menstruation plays in this?
What is something that historically was made for men, was not designed for women at all, right? So right from the history, if you look at how sport has developed, it was something that was meant for men, and women were not even allowed. Women had to become men. But I think the conversation when it comes to girls has its own nuances, which has not happened historically. But puberty is early for girls than it is for boys. I think what we need to understand is that when it comes to sport and experiences with sport, it is the way our body grows, right? For boys, they don't have their breasts popping out. They don't have their hips becoming bigger. They don't have the whole experience of bleeding, and how uncomfortable that can be. In India, again, if you look at just the facilities that we have, I mean, you don't have a toilet. Access to pads is actually a luxury. So when girls get onto the field and their bodies are changing so rapidly, there is this whole idea of, am I becoming slower? I used to be as fast as my brother, but now with my breasts popping out or with my hips becoming bigger, are things changing for me? I'm not feeling as fast. So should I play? It's not enjoyable anymore. These are all internal things that are going on, where if the coach or the parent is not constantly having this conversation, then the athlete or the girl is just having these internal conversations and making a decision that no, I'm not excelling here, so maybe I'll just study. But there's a lot of misconception around, should you swim, not swim on your period day. So you can get into the pool. There is no problem in better choices that you can make in terms of products that you're going to use, or like using a tampon versus a pad, but you can get into the pool.
I want to ask about injury risk, because that also one anecdotally reads that even ACL injuries are more likely during menstruation.
It means that we need more rehab on certain things like the knees. They really need to have a good rehab on our quadriceps, on our hamstrings, on our calves, so that we really know if when the other muscles are really well balanced, then you have the knee that is much more protected. It's just that simple.
Welcome to Raising an Athlete, a podcast for aspiring athletes and sports parents. In today's episode, we are tackling an often overlooked topic: understanding menstruation's impact on training and performance of young female athletes. Despite progress in breaking taboos around periods, many young girls still struggle with period-related challenges that affect their training, confidence, and even their decision to stay in sports. Our guest today is someone who understands these issues firsthand, Aditi Mutatkar. Aditi is a former international badminton player who has represented India at the highest levels, including the Commonwealth Games, the Asian Games, and World Championships. She currently leads the Athlete and Women in Sports initiative at Simply Sports Foundation. If you are a young athlete, a parent, a coach, or someone who wants to see women thrive in sports, this episode is for you. So let's get started. Aditi, welcome to Raising an Athlete.
Hi, Amita. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So you're, Aditi, leading such stellar work with the Simply Sports Foundation in breaking, the stigma around menstruation and really educating athletes, coaches, and parents on how to manage training and performance during periods. So our show is focused on young athletes, and the focus of our conversation today is going to be about breaking menstrual barriers in athletics and really keeping young girls, pre-teenage and teenage athletes into the sport. But before we get into that, you've had an incredible career in badminton, representing India at the highest levels. So it would be interesting to know a little about your journey, what inspired you to take up badminton, and what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as an athlete?
Yeah, so I think in terms of my journey, it started quite early. I mean, I started playing the sport when I was around 9 years old, and I think it was part genes and part my father's enthusiasm for the sport that sort of got me into badminton, because my mother was a quite serious athlete till she was in her, I think, teens, and she was studying in Gwalior at that time, but she of course couldn't pursue anything serious after that because of everything, right, from finances, the sort of upbringing that was there. So she was a part of four siblings, and and all of that. So there were other priorities of the family at that point. So she had to stop playing. So I think the will to sort of keep going at sport, and the support that I got came from that space, for my mother especially, because I think she wanted to be an athlete and she couldn't. So I think it started early, and I was 9 when I started playing, and competitive sport I think started at around 10 years old, and I didn't look back after that. I think I was lucky to sort of have my chances in terms of being picked very early by the Prakash Padukone Academy when I was, I think, 11, and then having a career that sort of had everything in it in terms of national achievement. I was senior national champion across all age groups, one of the few women to be able to do that. I got the privilege to play all the important games like the Asian Games, the Commonwealth Games, where we won a medal in Delhi as well. I was not fortunate enough to play the Olympics. I think that's the only sort of event that I couldn't have in my career. But I don't have any regrets. I think everything said and done, I did my best, and I think I had a career that taught me a lot, and sort of gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Right. Lovely. So you were ranked 27th in the world in 2008, which is an incredible achievement. Can you define like a moment from your career which really defined you or shifted things for you, shaped you both as an athlete and as a person?
I think it was the stint that I had in Germany. I think I was playing the Bitburger Open, and I had gone to Germany for that European circuit all by myself. I was alone. I was the only girl, female athlete in the team for that tournament, and everything from the finances to the planning of the travel to where I'm going to stay, what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to drink. I had no coach or a sports science team or anything that was traveling with me. I was kind of all alone, and I remember playing the quarterfinals, and I was playing the world number 10 at that point, Juliana Schenk, and she's from Germany, so it was her home turf where we were playing our quarters, and I remember beating her quite easily that day. And I think that moment of sort of beating her, and I had a lot of respect for Juliana. She was one of the most fiercest opponents, and had some really had a great career. And I just when I beat her, it was a lot of things, a lot of emotions that came together, because like I said, it was something that I had managed all on my own. My parents had taken a loan, and there was so much pressure to perform, and then to be able to perform and reach the finals of the Grand Prix that I was playing was a testament to what one can sort of achieve. If they believed, and if you have the sort of right attitude, you can do anything that you want, really. And I think that was one moment that I'll always remember, because the odds were against me, and I still sort of went ahead and could kind of reach that final. So that is, I think, one of the moments that I really.
How old were you during this tournament?
I think I was in around 2021. I think that was the age,
right.
Is what I remember.
Interesting. So if you look back at yourself as an athlete, how aware were you of the issues of women's health or menstruation, and what impact did they play in your career?
So I wasn't really aware of anything that was specific to my gender. I mean, I was never trained that way. I was never made aware of that. Quite contrary to it, I was always told that you need to compete with the boys, you need to run with them, and sort of, if you are able to beat them, you will be able to beat the girls easily, and so on and so forth. So the parameters were set actually with a boy on the other side. So there were no real conversations that were happening at that point around things like say sports bras, or what products are we using, what is our menstrual health history like, or do we feel sport in a different way. What I mean by that is, what about female psychology or female mental health? Does that even exist, or is that even important? So I don't think we even nutrition for that matter, because our physiology is different. Our nutritional needs are also unique, not in a general way, of course it's the same, but there are some unique characteristics that our nutrition might also have because of the physiology that we are gifted with. So all of these things were never part of our conversation, part of our training. So I had no real knowledge or experience of thinking even about this aspect of
Right.
sport.
So sometimes I feel very conflicted about this, because on one hand we talk about the need for things to be neutral. That I think something that you said, you're an athlete first, and then it's about the gender. And even in the mainstream world out there, so for example, when period leave is introduced, there is a lot of division between people who think this is correct or not. Some people feel that this is only going to create more discrimination against women, because if you say that you're equally strong as men, then you don't need crutches or support.
Yes.
But on the other hand, proponents of women's health talk about that there are real issues at hand. What do you feel about the debate?
So I think, there are two different things I feel, because in sport, the whole idea of periods and being knowledgeable about your menstrual health has a very different sort of manifestation on ground than a corporate period leave debate, right? Because I feel that with sport, everything that you do, every small step that you're taking in your training, in the way you're sort of preparing for a tournament, for it could be a blood test, it could be every small thing that you do in sport is going to have an impact on how you're going to play. I mean, it is that clinical, right? And in which, when you have a missing link, not understanding your body, or not understanding your cycles, or not understanding how your body reacts to the cycle, and how you feel mentally during the whole process of your cycle, that can have impact. I mean, and this impact is not going to be the same for every athlete. The degree of impact is going to be different for every athlete. It's a very, very individualized, unique experience, and you cannot sort of just generalize and say that this is how you need to prepare for your sport. I think it has a very, very individualized approach, and you cannot sort of generalize it and say that in this phase this is how you're going to train, and in the other phase this is how you're going to train, and this applies for all athletes. It doesn't work like that. So, and the science is also just developing. So we're just understanding a little bit about it after 10 years of some great women researchers fighting for this thing, that we need to understand this better to be able to make sense of our body and the science. So I think when I'm talking about sport, it matters, and it is something that needs to be taken seriously, and it has to be given equal importance as everything else in terms of sports science, be it nutrition, be it psychology. We already have support there, but we need to also have this sort of point given as much importance as everything else when it comes to female athletes. And your whole point on athlete first and all of that, I really believe that yes, we need equality is not a question for me. I mean, we need to be as equal as the men and the boys. There shouldn't be the kind of choices that we get to make, the sort of facilities available, the kind of prize money available. We all, of course, there has to be equality there. But when it comes to bodies and understanding that we are different, and that has to be understood and paid up importance too, because I think you can't in the sort of the blanket of equality discount how girls are built. We are just built differently, and it matters, right? So I think that is a nuance that we need to understand when it comes to especially performance and physical performance that is required in sport. Coming to the period leaves debate, I again feel that, like I've already said before, that it's a very, very individualized process, right? It is something that is very individual, and not every woman might need a period leave. Not every woman wants it or needs it, right? But yes, there are spaces where there is a requirement of taking a break, or there is that much pain and that much suffering, and a woman needs to sort of have that break or rest and all of those things. So I feel that again with this whole bit, it is very difficult to sort of have a general law or a general policy, because it's such an individual experience. So yeah, I mean, I really believe that it is something that needs deliberation in the way in which it shouldn't impact women negatively. I mean that is something that I see happening more than the positive part about it, and that is something that I'm scared
I have to share something with you. So, when my daughter was about 3, and I was, as a parent, for the first time, I was experiencing how gender stereotyping happens at a very early age. And that led me to actually launch a brand called Equality, which would challenge gender stereotypes in early childhood. And I remember we were kind of struggling with the tagline, and I understood that the children it's not that they're same. So we went with saying sometimes different, but always equal. What you were saying, that in the urge for equality, we sometimes may confuse that there may be different needs, that we are different, and I think the need to celebrate that difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want to ask Aditi, so if we look at it, the topic of menstrual health and women's health, globally versus India, what would be the patterns that we would see? Are we at the same point, or globally there is, or in other countries, and specifically when it comes to sports, is there better understanding? How do we fare?
I would say, like, this whole idea of looking seriously at female physiology is still quite new, and I think, of course, there are countries like, say, New Zealand, USA, of course, even Australia, there are these, even UK, for example. I think these are some of the countries that are maybe 10 years ahead of us in terms of the research that they have been putting out, in terms of the sort of interventions that are happening, and the sort of systems that are being put in place for girls and women. I think when it comes to India, I mean, I think we are just getting started off. I mean, we are still at the awareness stage, which is and we need a lot more research, and we need very India specific research. We can't keep going back to what your research paper in say athletes from the USA, and you sort of read that research, and you can't just pick that things up and come to India and say, let's apply that. I mean, there are general principles that are given, that there is this hormone does this, or this part of the cycle may have these sort of variations physically and mentally, and so on and so forth. So there are general frameworks available there, but when it comes to interventions, we need India specific interventions that work on our bodies, that work for our nutrition, that work for what is available here, for our culture. There are so many different aspects that are required to explore this further, right? And so I do believe that there are some nations that have sort of that have a better understanding of this today than us. But even for them, it's new. I mean, for even then, when they sort of are only just sort of starting to take it from just elite sport interventions to how do we even get it to the mass interventions, right? So it's something that is ongoing. But for India, we are just at level 1. I think there's so much work that is required, so much funding that will be needed. There's a serious sort of requirement of looking at this seriously, and not looking at it like ye to social service hai. I mean, it's not really that free pads is not going to solve the problem. We really need a deep dive into this whole aspect, and we need India specific deep dive, which is very, very important to understand.
So you spoke about the need for India specific research, and I think Simply Sports has done the Breaking Barriers for Women in Sports study, which is one of its kind study to really we look at our own athletes and the gaps that exist. If you could share a few key insights from that particular study regarding menstrual health and female participation in sports in India.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a pilot study. The hope really was that if we had enough funding, we could actually make it a bigger study. But I think we still had a decent number. We had around 200 plus athletes and coaches that participated with our surveys and interviews that we could do. We were in different state as well. We tried to be in Manipur, in the south. We tried to be in as many spaces as possible to sort of do this research. And I think some of the key things that came up were around safety. I think safety was something that was brought up across the board. There was a thing around, of course, support. I think most of our athletes come from rural, semi-urban sort of backgrounds. That is the reality, and there is not much funding there. Of course, the socio-cultural sort of barriers exist in terms of how we look at sport and what we need to do better in terms of how we think about sport and what are we going to do if we don't make it. I think that was another sort of he kept bringing out. In terms of menstruation, it was very clear. I mean, it was almost more than 70% athletes said that they were not comfortable about talking about menstruation over the coaches. I mean, I think it was sort of similar across the board. Also, the whole idea of are we trained exactly like the boys when we are trained? I mean, the only difference that they could talk about was about the amount of sprints that they are going to do. So just the amounts varied, but the training remained the same. So all of these things did come out from that report. Luckily, because we started with research and we started with this study, it became very easy for us to understand what is it that we need to attack first, and where do we want to start. So that's why I think menstruation came up from there. The whole idea of having a women program. So right now with Simply Sport, the whole grassroots program that we are going to run is going to be only for girls and women in sport, which we are very excited about, because I think that will give us a focus and data points which are very much required currently at scale. So I think that is something that all these sort of decisions about working on what we want to work on came out from that research. And I think one key point around safety and around access was about safe public transport. I think most of the girls said that my parents were daily wage laborers and they are not able to take us for training every evening or every morning. I mean, it is something that we have to manage, and because safety is a concern, we sort of are not allowed to then go out after 5 o'clock in the evening, or even a cycle is not going to help us. So we realize that just building infrastructure doesn't equal to giving access. I think when you build infrastructure and when you want girls to play, the infrastructure has to also consider how are they going to get there. And where are our girls coming from? I think in urban setups, there are other challenges. I mean, in the urban setups, it's a challenge of space. And then if the guys are playing, then where do the girls play? And there are different sort of challenges there. But because our research at that point was around athletes who were coming from rural, semi-urban sort of backgrounds, we realized that it's not just about having a stadium around. It is about how is the athlete going to get there. So I think these sort of subtle things that came up in that research has really helped us shape what we want to do and how do we want to approach the initiatives at Simply Sport.
Right. So, because the show is focused on young athletes, which is pre-teenage or at teenage level, I want to just shift gears and speak a little from the context of athletes. What are the things that they should be aware of, or, the sports parents should know. Now, I was listening to your conversation at the Sports Star Conclave that recently happened in Bihar. I think you made a very interesting point that while we talk about menstruation, what we miss is that women's health is not just about menstruation. There are a whole set of other issues like puberty, breast health, pelvic health, body image issues. What I want to ask you is that I think by the time girls turn 14, they're set to drop out of sports twice at the rate of boys. And this is something that happens globally. It's not something that happens only in India. Now, what are the different factors that lead to this drop? And what is the role that puberty and menstruation plays in this?
I think the idea of women's health is actually it is not just about so when we talk about periods, it's actually about our rights. I think we need to understand this whole idea of, when we say women health in sport, or when we say periods in sport, it is a right to be able to be aware of who we are, what our bodies are like, and what do we need to make sure that our bodies can perform the way we want to, right? So it first of all, we need to understand that it's our right, and we are not getting that because because it is, sport is, and it's universal, that sport is something that historically was made for men. It was not designed for women at all, right? So right from the history, if we look at how sport has developed, it was something that was meant for men, and women were not even allowed. Women had to become men. I mean, there are such fantastic stories of how women had to break through to get into sport, and those are our heroes, and those are my heroes in terms of so many of them who sort of would run marathons and dress up as boys, and then people figured out that it was a woman. And they are just fantastic stories, because it is our right. It's our right to play sport, and within that right comes the whole idea of women health and understanding our bodies, which is not really something that we have had access to, right? And that's what happens then, because the approach is sort of male centric. The conversations are then around that, like how can we have stronger bodies, how can we have a six pack, and the six pack is something that is aspirational, and all of that. But I think the conversation when it comes to girls has its own nuances, which has not happened historically, because either the research was there, and that's why there was never any practical application of it on the field as well. So when it comes to younger athletes, I think it's very, and when we look at it from a female gaze, right, I think it's important to understand that puberty, though similar for both boys and girls, I mean, of course the age groups and when it's girls is different, and for girls it's actually now becoming even earlier than it used to be before. I mean, I've had girls who have come up to me and said that we are menstruating and I'm just 9, or we are just 8, and it is really, things are changing very rapidly because of our lifestyles, because of what we are eating, and so on and so forth. But puberty is early for girls than it is for boys, and in which of course menarche, or their first period, is also something that is part of that whole process. I think what we need to understand is that when it comes to sport and experiences with sport, it is the way our body grows, right? For boys, they don't have their breasts popping out, they don't have their hips becoming bigger, they don't have the whole experience of bleeding, and how uncomfortable that can be, and not just from the internal experience of it, but also from the external viewpoint. In India, again, if you look at just the facilities that we have, I mean, you don't have a toilet. Access to pads is actually a luxury. Millions and millions of women and girls don't have access to even pads today. So you have to understand that it's a battle. It's an internal battle, and then you are adding external factors to it in terms of not having clean toilets, not having the water, not having the right product. There are so many of these things that are going on. So when girls get onto the field and their bodies are changing so rapidly, there is this whole idea of, am I becoming slower? I used to be as fast as my brother, but now with my breasts popping out, or with my hips becoming bigger, are things changing for me? Like, I'm not feeling as fast, I'm not feeling as light on the field anymore. My experience of the sport is changing because of this. I'm not able to beat my brother anymore because I've changed. So should I play? It's not enjoyable anymore, and I'm not having, and these are all internal things that are going on, where if the coach or the parent is not constantly having this conversation that it's fine, just be patient, the body is going to gear up and it's going to be all right, things are going to change for some time, but it is going to get better, then the athlete or the girl is just having these internal conversations and making a decision that no, I'm not excelling here, so maybe I'll just study. Because in studies it doesn't matter, because I don't have to, even if I have a boob, it doesn't really matter in how I'm going to do my homework, right? But it is going to change when she's on the field. So I think with puberty, these experiences are a little more pronounced for women and girls, and because we are not able to have these conversations with them, because our coaches are not able to have that conversation, because like I said, your whole gaze is male. So when you're talking to girls, how do you even approach this topic about breasts, about they're changing, about wearing the right bra? So I've had some very lot of experiences through our workshops where the girls don't know what a sports bra is, or they don't have access to it because they are too costly, or they have developed breasts so quickly that they had to change the sport. Like if they were playing volleyball, they had to move to handball because they just couldn't cross their hands, and they were just uncomfortable having a conversation with their coach about it, so they just slowly sort of change the sport and take something else. So I think this whole thing around puberty, around being able to menstruate safely, properly, that is not something that we prioritize for girls. It is going to be, during those times, it will be a sort of not a pleasant experience for them, and we have to understand that, like in everything else that we learn as young people, those are our foundation years, even when it comes to physical activity or sport, right? I mean, those are the years that matter the most in terms of what have we experienced on that field. And then of course in terms of body image also, because again this whole journey of growing and developing is not the same for everyone. You have young athletes constantly feeling that I'm too thin, I'm too fat, I have a big boob, I have my hip is too big, and getting commented on that, and then slowly you are starting to sort of grow into your own shell, and not being able to break through that shell because nobody else is actually understanding that there is a conversation required here, and maybe just that one conversation might change the way the girl is thinking about sport and get more confidence. But we are not building those channels for the girls, and we are not designing our programs for the girls in that way. I also feel that when it comes to young girls, the way we design sport for them on the field also matters as much as it as the other health and the way we develop matter, right? How do we design sport for girls is also something that needs its own sort of nuance, its own sort of conversations. If we are designing something which has boys in it as well, what are we going to tell the boys to make sure that girls are getting the similar chances that they are as them? So if they're playing a game of football, for example, are the boys constantly just passing to the boys because they think that the girls are not going to be able to tackle? And if that is happening, is the coach paying attention to these themes that are going on and having a conversation with the guys and saying, hey, you have to, she's right there at the goalpost, pass the ball, have that confidence, right? So I think what we miss in all of these things is when we don't have these conversations, when the coach is not sort of enabling these conversations, then I think what happens is the experience of the girl is about going into the shell and saying, yeah, theek hai, I'll do art and craft. I don't have to worry about the ball coming to me. Even if it doesn't come, I can do my art and craft by my own self, right? So I think the design of sport, the conversations around our bodies, how they develop, I think those need to be, for girls especially, need to be front and center, so that you are already priming them that it's fine, bodies will change, you will become slower for some time, but we'll work around it, we'll find a way to make it stronger, we'll find a way to equip you with the right sort of mindset, the right sort of skills, and then we will be in a better place. So I think these are some of the things which I fear a lot when it comes to working with younger girls. Like what is the ecosystem around it, and how are we sort of talking to them, understanding them, their sort of problems at that
right
point.
So I think I was focusing a lot more on the physiological change that menstruation begins, but what I found fascinating when you spoke was the psychological impact of it. It is how they start perceiving themselves. And I think the other thing that strikes me is that while it's important to speak to girls and address these concerns, parallelly, I mean, there is a whole other ecosystem of people who, it's not as if they need to be spoken later, they need to be involved, which is the coaches or the parents or the administrators. All of them also need to, because the different people in the ecosystem need to know what they need to do about it. So for example, the football example that you gave, well, if the coach doesn't know, often enough in Indian context, by the way, the example that you gave, I've had actually a first-hand experience of this with my daughter. She'd go to play football, the boys would not pass the ball, and I remember my husband getting upset with the coach to say, it is your job. Tell the guy that either you're going to pass the ball or you're going to sit, there's going to be a consequence of that. But the coach probably didn't perceive it like that. In his mind, it was like, the message usually seems to be toughen up or harden up or be like, or be strong enough. So I think what you said about rights also strikes that you got to know in that equation Because even as a mother, I felt that, oh, maybe it is about hardening up. Maybe, we need to do something about our daughter being strong enough and less about actually asking the coach about it.
Yeah, no, I think hardening up and everything will come when there is a platform, when there's an opportunity to harden up. There is a very fine line there, right? If, for example, if your daughter likes to play football, and again, I've had parents who have come, especially for a sport like football, saying that we just don't know where to find a girls' team. There are just not enough girls' team to play, so they have to play with the boys, right? So can you help us find a girls' team? And I generally don't have a direct answer for them. It's maneuvering ways of, I know someone, can there is a club, where is the club? So it's not very out there. For boys, it's not simple. I mean, you will find a football team much quicker than for a girl, right? But what I'm coming to is that I completely understand that point of view, that we need to harden up and we need to make our own space. Expecting that from a girl who's 10 years old, 11 years old, right? At that point, the whole idea of winning, is that really as important, or are we setting up some foundational skills of respect, and it matters even as you grow up as an athlete in football. If you're not able to make your team feel like your own, and impart those sort of life skills as well, you're not going to be somebody who's going to be liked, or you'll not be able to even move forward, because that it is going to come up as a barrier anyway. But what I'm coming to is that for a girl to harden up, is this behavior hardening her up, or is this when this becomes a pattern, is that actually breaking her resolve? That is the fine line that we need to sort of figure out as parents, as coaches also, right? And how much are we going to for a 10-year-old or 11-year-old team, how much are we going to push towards winning, versus how much are we going to push towards being able to give those opportunities, that for example, you give the ball out to a girl, and then if she's not able to perform, or whatever, then yes, you need to harden up, you need to understand it, you need to be more skillful and all of that. But imagine that the girl is just not getting the opportunity. So I mean, how does she even know if she's good, bad? How does anybody know, right? So the equity question is very important here. And I think that gets missed out when we design, because again, the whole win piece becomes extremely important. But I don't believe that in the younger age groups that should be that important, in terms of the way we are designing our sessions and the way we are designing our
right. I also want to say, Aditi, that I think a lot of what we carry in sport is also culturally what we've picked of our beliefs around menstruation, how you behaved, or what you heard from parents. When often enough my mom says this, that as a younger generation, you guys have far more access to information and knowledge than we did, so we actually didn't know how to equip or how to handle those situations. I mean, as a young person, I remember when I would have my periods, I would just be in pain, and for hours I would be just resting, not going to school, and I didn't know if this was the right thing to do or not. And I dare say that even now, I have the right information to say that what should one be doing in such situations. So I want to ask you about the myths around training when it comes to menstruation among female athletes. If you can speak about what are the top myths, when you're menstruating, should you not, if you could speak about that.
Yeah, no, I think, see, menstruation is a very, very natural process. And so we get a lot of athletes who speak about pain, like you spoke about your experience, but when you're menstruating, that kind of pain is actually not normal. I mean, you're not supposed to have that level of pain where you can't even get up from your bed and walk or do some light exercise, and if this is a pattern that month on month, you have that is so painful that you can't even move and do your normal activities. That is not normal. I mean, I think endometriosis is a condition, and I think even globally, I mean, we know very less about it is the most ignored sort of phenomenon even globally. But that is something that exists. That if the amount of bleeding and the amount of pain, there are certain certain things that are normal and certain things that are abnormal, and that need to be checked. And there are a lot of athletes that speak about enormous pain. We have had athletes who have fainted, for example, because they just couldn't, especially when they are on tournaments where they don't have the right food or they're not drinking properly, and they've just fainted because of the pain. Right, so this is something that does happen, and this is not normal. So this whole idea that 2 days I'm going to have that much pain where I can't even move around and do very light exercise, that is abnormal, right? So one needs to be careful about that. The second myth that we do consider is about just getting into water. Like, there's a lot of misconception around should you swim, not swim on your period day. And a lot of athletes have that issues that, should I go into a swimming pool to recover or not because I'm having my period. So you can get into the pool. There is no problem, to get into the pool when you're on your period. Of course, there are better choices that you can make in terms of products that you're going to use, or like using a tampon versus a pad, and all of those things do matter. But you can get into the pool. I think that is the second biggest thing that we have sort of encountered, where girls or even coaches are like, nahi, wo to period ke dinon mein bata deti hai, and then we don't let them get into the pool. So I think that is something that we need to understand. The third piece around, I feel, is around just this whole idea of that things have changed. Things have changed is for a very, very small percentage of us women, right? We have to understand that India is not the urban, sort of semi-elite people that we are. Like we are sort of privileged, right? India is not that. I mean, the majority of India actually is still just unaware of, and there is where the girls that we work with, through Simply Sport, where we go into these smaller villages across India and sort of talk to the girls, we realize that kuch zyada badla nahi hai. I mean, the mothers were as not informed, and the girls are also in the same space. When they look at products, and when we talk about things like period underwear and things like that, they are like, what the hell is it? They're looking at it as if it is complete some sort of an alien material that has come out, right? I mean, so we have to sort of be able to understand that nuance, that India is not us. I mean, we are a very small population of India, and which is more sort of privileged and empowered. So that is this. I mean, when we talk to funders, that is what we try to sort of say, that India, the majority of us are still grassroots, and that's actually where sport is actually really, really growing in India, and it's not as much in the elite. But the other thing I feel is that this whole thing around products and the use of products. I think from our experience, though we know that cups are more sustainable, and we are able to sort of for the environment and so on and so forth. But we have realized that there is a lot of misconceptions also, but there are some technical sort of challenges for girls to just switch to cups. I mean, that is something that is not easy for most of our athletes to do, and majority of athletes in India actually do prefer the pads over the cup. So it's not an easy sort of transfer, and also the whole idea of not having, again, water across the board in our stadiums, in where the girls play, that also matters. And so the pad becomes an easier sort of way to use rather than the cup. So I think all these things around, for us, the whole idea about the initiative is that we want to tell the girls and the coaches that of course girls can play on their period. They are supposed to play, and they are supposed to be comfortable when they do that, and that is the whole intention of the initiative. The initiative doesn't sort of say that that we don't want you guys to take complete rest. I mean, we want to ensure that they're able to play, right? So I think the big myth that we're trying to sort of negate for the girls and the coaches also is that rest is not your option, right? Because as they grow as athletes, it's going to be extremely difficult to tell them to rest on a match day. That's just not practical, right? But if we can understand how our cycle works, understand how we can sort of empower ourselves by understanding our physical and mental challenges, and then sort of maneuver our training and preparation accordingly, maybe we will have better results, right? Maybe we don't have to rest, and we can still go ahead and perform, right? So I think these are some of the things that we have seen around menstruation and our work.
One thing I wanted to share was that even in the example that where I was speaking about myself, the sense that I get as an adult now is that I don't think I needed that rest on some of the occasions. That it's just that nobody told me it will get better if I get going and move. If I had just moved and done, more activity, I would be better off. So I think that's what I meant, that because we are not equipped with information that if this happens, so there is a cramp that happens, but how do you handle that cramp? is rest the best way to handle that? But I do want to talk about specifically about period pains and cramps that happen, and they sometimes can be debilitating. How can an athlete continue, or should they continue if they're experiencing discomfort? Or what are the ways of handling, or doing something differently which helps you with the cramps and the pain?
No, I think one thing is very clear that if the pain is as bad as you can't move, and it is something that is happening on month basis, the first thing one needs to do is have a gynecologist to kind of check you up, because I think, like I said, if there is something that there's a serious condition there that you can diagnose quickly, there are ways to sort of tackle that. Right? So I think that is step number one. That if you have pain where you can't train and maybe you can't train very hard on those days, which is fine. I mean, I don't think that you need to keep pushing your 100% even when you have that sort of pain, but at least you should be able to do at least 50% or some sort of activity during the first 2 days where generally we experience that much pain. So I think the first piece is that just get yourself checked if it is that bad for a period of time. The second thing that we always say is go for as much natural remedies as possible before you sort of resort to pills and anything else, because I think our first approach is take a pill. Pills are something that are quite widely used by girls as painkillers for the pain, but we don't know how that manifests in the long term. So yes, I mean, painkillers are not all painkillers are bad, and every medication that you're going to take for pain has to go through two things. One is that the doctor is prescribing it and you're not sort of popping it because your other athlete or other friend is popping it, because every medication has its own manifestation, and it needs a diagnosis to be able to say that this is the medicine that will help. So I think medication is an option, but it should be your option after you've tried everything natural. So for example, magnesium, zinc, dark chocolate, these are some of the things in terms of nutrition that have shown recent results in sort of making the pain a little more manageable. A heat pad, or having a heat pad in your kit bag, for example, you're making sure that you're able to sort of use that as to just relieve some pain and feel a little better. There are a lot of yogasanas actually that have been prescribed, which can again help you feel a little better in those 2 days, that it could be controlling your breathing. A lot of other asanas that have also shown some sort of result in making athletes feel better. And I think the other thing would be, like I said, nutrition, medication, even contraception. Contraception in India is extremely low. We don't understand it at all, and it's very, very new for us. But I think contraception can also, I mean, it is not just used for childbirth, and that's not the only use of contraception, is what we need to understand. There are various uses of it, and internationally actually it is used quite extensively by athletes to be able to control their hormonal response and and all of that. So I think that is something that we've not even touched, and I think we encourage athletes to not have a way of, yes, let's use contraception, but know that is something that is there that can be used in extreme cases, and one needs to have a conversation with the gynecologist again to be sure that what is the course that one can use. I think the other part to sort of help you more psychologically as an athlete with period pain is to know that it is coming. I think what happens is period tracking is something that has really, really helped. Wherever we have seen athletes tracking their periods, they are less surprised and more prepared. That these are the dates that I am thinking that my period is going to come. So I'm already ready that these 2 days are going to be quite tough. If there's a tournament coming at that point, I need to be mentally sort of prepared that there is going to be this pain that is going to come. I'm going to have tried some of these remedies that my coaches or I have already understood. So I'm going to use these remedies and I'm going to be okay, right? So I think when a lot of athletes actually are caught by surprise because they're not tracking their cycle, and that actually has a more mental, again, like you said, right? I mean, sometimes the perceived notion of pain is much higher than the actual pain, and that happens because, and then that causes anxiety, that causes this whole idea of being sulking about it, tournament है आज ही मेरे को period आ गया. But if you know that this is the time frame that it's going to be coming already, then you're mentally sort of prepared that it's okay. I mean, I'm going to have my period, but I have these ways of tackling it already, so I'm going to be fine, and that can actually make you less anxious and much better off on the court. So I think there are these sort of things that we push for in our workshop. We do some demonstrations around which yogasanas can help. What sort of food is something that can be looked at. Like simple things like avoiding Coca-Cola or too much aerated sugary drinks, because that can cause acidity and all of those things as well. So we sort of are natural remedy first sort of approach. We give that approach to the athletes, and then sort of making decisions around medication, contraception, and things like that.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I also want to know more in terms of how the menstrual cycle plays a role. Is there a particular time in the cycle which is more optimal for peak performance, or how should women athletes training be evolved according to their cycle? Is there something that needs to be different?
Again, like I said, I think this is a very, very individual approach, and you cannot generalize and say that this phase is better than other. But yes, of course, when you look at some of the research that has come out, we know that the part where you just finish off your period, the whole follicular phase, which is just after your period and during your period, I think that is the time where the athlete or where our bodies feel really, really good, like both mentally and physically, because estrogen is much higher at that point, and that is the phase, right up to ovulation, where it is said that most of the athletes feel mentally and physically a lot better than the time in the luteal phase, where you're just sort of starting. The PMS part starts off for a lot of athletes there, back pain and anxiety and being irritated, all of these things, food cravings, all of these things do start for a lot of athletes just before their period, which is right after ovulation. And that is the phase where you do see more changes sort of happening, not in the right direction for a few athletes. So I think and also I think one of the things that we have seen for athletes is the rise in temperature, which happens like almost by a degree. You feel feverish, for example, right before your period, because the progesterone levels, if they're higher, they can do that to your body. So I'm sweating a lot, and again, now this 1 degree change for an athlete who's playing an outdoor sport matters, because you're going to sweat that much more, and because you're going to sweat that much more, that means that the team with you needs to have ice pads and things like that handy, so that they know that you are going to suffer, and so they're cooling down your body temperature so that you can play well. So it's a fascinating science. I mean, our bodies are fascinating and they are difficult to understand. That's why you don't see people researching us, but it's fascinating. And with the whole idea of sport, right, it really matters. That 1 degree matters, right? So like I started with that, and I'm sort of ending this with that. But that this whole idea of this mission for us is that if the athlete is empowered, that she knows her body, right, this is how it works, I think that itself is so powerful, and if she can confidently say that this is how I'm feeling, coach, and if she's confident enough to put her point across to the coach, that is going to change the conversation around this, and it will force the coaches, and which I think the coaches already are, people who really want to help. I have never found a coach in my workshop who has said this is stupid science, and we are not interested. I mean, they actually tell us हमें किसी ने कुछ बताया ही नहीं था, because they come from the same society, right? So anyway, I mean, coming back to the cycle piece, I think, there are general trends that we have seen around the cycle, but again, it comes back to tracking and understanding your body through the cycle to be able to make it a very individualized experience for the athlete.
To be able to see for yourself that where in your cycle do you feel more energetic, or where is the point, which may not correspond with what you're saying, the general signs of it. Your body may have its own specific signs of how you feel.
Yes. And I think, there are certain studies that have shown, for example, during ovulation, injuries for athletes are seen a little more than usual, right? But again, this is all new. I mean, we need more research to be able to, concretize this. So I would say that all the research that one is reading, we need to You gotta understand that these are general points and frameworks that are available. We have to really work towards individualizing.
Actually, that was my next question. I wanted to ask about injury risk, because that also one anecdotally reads that even ACL injuries are more likely during menstruation. Any other data points or insights on how to avoid injury, or something to be aware of during your cycle?
I think it's very difficult to make that direct connection, right? That menstruation is directly connected with causing you an injury. I don't think it works that way. I think it's a plethora of things that have to come together, in which menstruation can play a role, and that's why you need to track it. I mean, that is the whole idea of it. You can't just say a menstruating athlete is more prone to sort of having an injury. So when we even think about the ACL, for example, or the female athlete triad, the ACL piece, we are more prone because there is also a structural sort of issue there, right? I mean, in the way that our bodies are made, we make narrower angles than men, and that also impacts the way we feel and play sport, and how we twist and turn, and all of that. So there is a structural advantage that men have also on that front, and that doesn't mean that we always have to be injured. I mean, it means that we need more rehab on certain things, like the knees. Like, we need to really strengthen them. We really need to have a good rehab on our quadriceps, on our hamstrings, on our calves, so that we really, if when the other muscles are really well balanced, then you have the knee that is much more protected. It's just that simple. So you need to have those sort of better prehab schedules, better warm-up schedules for women, for girls, so that their knees are sort of protected. The other piece that comes out a lot is the whole pelvic muscle. So the pelvic muscle for women, it is relatively weaker because it carries the uterus on it, which the men don't, and it puts a lot of pressure. So when that happens, strengthening the pelvic muscle is again a very, very important piece that is very specific to, again, women. So the core area, the pelvic region, we have to be able to do it, especially for women who have who want to play sport after pregnancy. It becomes even doubly tough because after you've carried a baby, that whole muscle has really weakened out. So being able to strengthen that, right? So that is something that also sort of is important to think about. A lot of breast injuries happen, and because breasts are so sexualized in the normal context, right? Where there are, for example, sports like rugby, sports like boxing, taekwondo, where there's real contact, right? Breasts, you can have clots in the breast, you can have pain in the breast, but it is again ignored, or we have a hesitation of sort of going and saying this to our physios, and because it requires touch and all of that to be able to diagnose it, right? So these are some of the things that are quite rampantly happening, but because because we are not able to have conversations around it very naturally, it's something that stays with us and can then kind of have a health impact, right? The other way in which menstruation can be a sort of a way to understand our bodies and understand this better is that if the female athlete triad is where you are sort of in this triangle where you are training very hard, and then you're not eating properly, and because you're not eating properly, the body first response is that let's stop the period, because that's not something that is going to keep her alive. So it just stops your period, and when the period stops, the sort of hormonal imbalances that you see go to causing more and more stress fractures and more bone issues, because estrogen is a vital sort of resource that we need for our bone health. And if you're sort of in that triad, then you are going to have more injuries, and your missed period actually becomes a good sign. If you're really tracking, you will know that you're missing your period for the last 3 months, something is off, that you're either not eating properly or your training is just too much. So to even understand that period becomes a nice sort of way to understand that something is off. So we can actually use period to make empowered decisions about are we overtraining or are we not eating properly, and that's where the injury connect comes into place, because there are a lot more stress fractures that an athlete can have, and when she falls into that triad. So these are some of the general themes around.
This is very insightful. What can parents do with teenage athletes? What could they be doing differently to keep them in sports?
No, I think, I mean, the first thing is to be able to create enough opportunities for girls to participate. I think, I mean, we need to, not everything is, especially when they're starting out, cannot be related to how many medals they win. I think it should become a way of living. I think once we, sort of encourage that and give them those opportunities, if somebody is really good at it, they will become an athlete eventually. But I think giving those opportunities as parents becomes extremely important. And again, this whole thing is very urban, rural. I mean, I think the we have to understand that the way to solve this for girls, for urban population, is completely different from the rural. So there is a big deep dive that one can do, and which is a separate sort of intervention that is required at the rural level. At the urban level, the intervention and the challenges are a little different. So we need to sort of know that you can't have one approach across the board, because every region, every state, every sort of where you're coming from will have these different ways of interventions that will be required. So I think from the urban lens, I think it's about making sure that your girl is playing something or the other, whatever she enjoys. It can be even dance to start off with, right? I mean, anything that is keeping her physically active and giving her those experiences, is important to create. Second thing I would say is to be able to sort of not limit her by saying that have only girls in the group. Like it should be something that the boys should be a part of those early groups that the girls play with, because it really helps both the genders to understand the limitations, the strengths of each other, and how to sort of communicate with each other, how to understand what one can do better than the other, and things like that. So I think it's extremely crucial to give them those mixed gender experiences as well in sport, and to encourage that. And then, of course, like we spoke earlier, that who is the coach? I mean, who is coaching her, right? Are we selecting the right coaches at the foundation level becomes extremely important when we look at girls, because generally there are male coaches, so one has to be doubly sure about safety, or what are the kind of conversations the coach is having with the girls, what is the sort of culture that the coach has built around the girls. We should be able to ask them about, do they know about things like puberty and menstruation? Do they have plans to talk about this with their athletes? What is their point around that? As a parent to a female athlete, I think these are conversations that if a coach is not comfortable with already, then at least there should be an inclination to learn and to be able to educate the athlete. So I think the coach becomes a very, very important factor in terms of how long the girl is going to keep going to sport, because they will define how these sessions are being built and how much are they enjoying it. The last thing that I would say, and which is not really specific to gender, is this whole idea of playing to win at a very early stage. I think what tends to happen as parents, and I see this, even my son is just, I think, in lower KG now, and I remember that there was a sports day that was there in the school, and he came back. Luckily for me, I mean, he won and came back. He was very excited about the sports day in general, which was nice to know, but I had no inclination to that he has to win. Of course, I was not thinking about any of that. But what I observed after that was interesting, where I saw that in the mothers group, again, where most of the school groups are mother groups, I have no idea why would fathers not be part of this. I just don't understand. It is just the weirdest of things, because Chinmay would like to be as involved as I am. I mean, why can't there be a mother-father group? Is something that I don't understand yet. Trying to make sense of it, but the mothers group, I saw that immediately on the group there were parents sort of posting photos of the kids with with the medals, and that they won the second prize or the first prize and all of that. Though it was very interesting to observe, because I would never think of doing that, because I would think about what the other parents whose kids were not winning the medal would feel like, and is it really important to celebrate it in this way at all? I mean, it didn't make sense to me, because I just feel that this also shows a theme that is going on around how important, or it is to get that certificate or that medal for the parent. The kid doesn't, really care. I mean, they will cry because they didn't win, and they'll come back and start playing their, whatever they play at home. But for the parent, it was important to put that photo. And once one parent started it, it was like a bloodbath of these photos coming up, and I was like, my God, I mean, they are just in lower kg, for God's sake. Like, I mean, we should just be saying, oh wow, they had a sport day, I hope they had fun. I mean, that was the conversation that one would have. So I think that is extremely crucial, because it becomes very difficult for children to manage parent expectations, and they start as early as in the lower kg. When he came back with the medal, of course I was happy and I gave him a hug, but that doesn't mean I go and talk about it so proudly. It was a 30-meter race. Come on. I mean, so it's more about the parent at that stage, and it's our attitudes towards sport. It's really at that stage. It's not about winning. It should never be about winning. It should be about what they learn on the field, what they learn from losing. I mean, I think that's the only space where they really, really lose, because you've anyways gone, the exams have gone off the chart. Nobody's giving exams anymore. There's no way to know what you're good at. It's very difficult for a parent to even understand what the hell is going on. But in sport, there's a direct connection with losing, and not, and what you learn from that. What do you feel? How do you get back on the field, even if you're feeling bad or sad, and you're crying? So I think if, as parents, the attitude is with sport is about, especially when they're young and they've not sort of decided to competitively play, if it starts with the element of fun, it will remain fun much longer. But if it starts with the element of, are you getting better? Are you beating the boys? Are you beating, are you becoming, the number one in the class? Which is very natural to feel. But if you're putting that pressure on that girl, I have seen so many of them then going into that trap of overtraining, getting injured when they're like just 12 years old. And it's just crazy. I mean, the parents have to, especially now because there's so much available, we have to take care.
I think it's symptomatic of the times we live in, where thanks to social media, external validation has become so important. Kids are almost like status symbols for parents, and it's less about what you experience, what you feel, what happens inside of you, the character building or resilience, and it is more about how you appear. So that's something that I think all of us need to be aware of. I'm aware, Aditi, I've taken a lot of your time, but just one final question that I wanted to ask you about menstruation being seen as a women's issue, whereas actually men have a very important role to play in creating a supportive environment. Now, there are two parts to it. One is that, men sense discomfort in engaging with this topic because they don't know, what should they be saying or feeling or thinking about this. What would you say to a man listening, a male listening to this particular podcast? What would you want them to take away about menstruation in sports? And the other being, often enough, women themselves are, unintentionally reinforcing the stigma. The mothers are keeping the fathers out. Like, this is not appropriate. This is something that the women need to talk about. What would you say to a woman listening to this conversation?
No, I think more than man, woman, I think this whole conversation is gender neutral. I don't think it is, especially at the conversation level. I would really, we tell this to the parents and the coaches also, that, when the girl has her first period, the conversation that you have with her is going to be crucial in the way she is going to sort of lead her life after that. So if when she has her first period, can in the night all of you sit together and just talk about it together? I mean, that is one step that you can take, because that's immediately putting an image in the girl's head that my dad was there right there, and it's fine. I mean, we had a normal conversation. He spoke about, are you feeling pain, or are you okay? And he gave me a hug, and it was fine. Like, tomorrow, if I want to get a pad, I can tell my dad, right? So it is the first conversation, if that can happen with both the parents on the table, and they just have a nice conversation around it, and whatever anxiety the girl is feeling, that the father can address it with as much empathy as a woman, the mother is. I think that can be a game changer right there, because then that men can talk about it. As a girl, that's what you are taking back with you. The second thing I would say is that from the coach's angle, because that's where mostly you'll have males, is that you need to, as parents also, I think, take the first step to go and tell the coach that she started menstruation, that she's a menstruating athlete. What are you going to do about that? Because that also puts the onus on the coach to say that either I don't know, I don't know much about this, so that means that I need to go and read and come back and give an answer to the parent. But if the parent is not sort of asking this question, the coach is generally like, it's okay, I mean, it's a parent issue, it's not my issue. But but it is his issue because in sport it is something that, like we already discussed, it does have an impact. So I think coaches, for example, when they take registration, that is one thing that we say. When you take registrations of your athlete, just put menstruation. Are you menstruating as a question? Simple as that. That means that you are sort of being a female first, and you're getting this data for yourself, so that you can have a conversation if required, when it's required. Then I think in terms of having, if you have an academy and you can afford a period, sort of dispensing machine or something like that. I mean, these are all very visual things which keep menstruation as a norm and as simple. Like we tell them, put infographics in your academies, about menstruation, so that when the boys are reading it's encouraged, it's fine. Simple things like keeping a pad in your kit bag as a male coach, it says a lot. So if when an athlete is menstruating and she doesn't have a pad, and the coach says, oh, it's okay, I have a pad, he takes the pad out, openly gives it to the athlete. Everybody is watching that, and that becomes a norm, that it's okay. I mean, culturally we have to help each other out, and a girl is going to menstruate sometimes and should not have a pad in her bag, right? So I think these are simple behaviors that if we can change around this, it will solve the problem. The other thing I would say is that at a higher level, I truly believe that men are already helping us out, and they are already sort of being enablers. Like Ankit Nagori, who's our founder, it was his decision to have menstruation as a way of going forward and as an initiative, right? So he has already shown that he's an enabler, that he wants to solve this problem. Similarly, when I talk to all the academies, or when the Bihar government, for example, Ravindran sir, they are all men. They are not women, and they're mostly, when I'm in sport, especially when I'm talking to decision makers, they're all men. And I've never heard anybody saying, I've always got support, and they've always said that yes, sometimes money, resources becomes a problem, but at the principally, everybody wants to, of course, solve for this. So I don't think men are disabling this in any way anyway. I mean, it's just about having that conversation at home first, then at your playing spaces, and making coaches more responsible, that that you are going to be with my athlete for a quite considerable time. How are you going to tackle this? And then let the coach decide, let the coach take the onus, and come back to you with, this is what I'm going to do, that I'm going to have a gynac come and take a session every 6 months to just keep the girls aware, or I'm going to have this session for the boys as well, so the boys are not chit-chatting and having fun, and having empathy towards this and being a support system. So all these things are very small behaviors that are required to normalize it. It's not rocket science. So I think these are some of the things that can...
Brilliant. I think this has been the most insightful conversation, and I'm sure a starter for most people who are watching this. There's a lot more to explore, and I feel, like you said, globally, in India, rural, urban, I think women, men, all of us have a lot more to learn on this topic. So thank you so much, Aditi, for making time for this and sharing all your insights.
Thank you, Amita. Thank you so much for having me.